There is one thing that happens when two people are truly meant to be together. It does not matter how different their lives are. It does not matter how far apart they seem. It does not matter how unlikely the circumstances look from the outside. This one pattern appears almost every single time, and most people completely misunderstand it when it arrives. Most people believe that destiny is supposed to feel beautiful from the very first moment. They expect it to arrive like a soft breeze. They picture two people meeting, smiling, and everything suddenly making sense. They imagine instant comfort, effortless connection, and the feeling that life has finally arranged itself the way it was always supposed to. But that is not how real destiny works. Real destiny does not knock gently. It arrives and it disrupts everything. It does not bring peace first. It brings change. It pulls things apart before it ever puts anything back together. And that disruption, as painful and confusing as it feels, is not a mistake. It is the beginning of something much deeper than most people allow themselves to understand. When two people are genuinely meant for each other, the universe does not rush them into love. It actually does the opposite. It creates distance. It removes them from each other's lives at exactly the moment when closeness feels most possible. It challenges their beliefs, shakes their sense of direction, and forces each person to face things about themselves that they have been quietly avoiding for a long time. This is not cruelty. This is preparation. Because here is the truth that almost no one talks about. If two people who are meant to be together came together before they were ready, they would hurt each other. They would bring unhealed wounds into the space between them. They would repeat old patterns. They would love from fear instead of strength. So life steps in. Life says not yet. And that is the one thing that almost always happens first. People often expect destined love to feel safe from the beginning. They think it should feel like arriving home. But the first feeling that comes with a truly deep connection is not comfort. It is recognition. Something inside you responds before your mind has time to process what is happening. You meet this person, and something shifts. You may not feel peaceful. You may not feel certain. You may feel unsettled in a way you cannot explain. And that unsettled feeling comes from a very specific reason. They see you, not the version of you that you show the world. They see deeper layers. They notice things you normally hide, even from yourself. And that kind of being seen can feel almost threatening when you are not ready for it. Stay with that feeling, because it matters more than you realize. That discomfort in the beginning is not a warning sign. It is not evidence that something is wrong. It is actually evidence that something real is happening. A destined connection does not only reflect your light back to you, it also reflects your fears, your wounds, and the emotional work you have been avoiding. It holds up a mirror, and mirrors do not always show what you want to see. That is why these connections feel intense rather than easy in the early stages. They bring awareness before they bring closeness. They awaken things inside you before they ever bring peace. And because of this, people who are truly meant to end up together rarely stay together when they first meet. Life separates them, and that separation is the most important part of the entire story. Here is what most people get wrong. They treat the separation as the end. They call it failure. They call it bad timing. They call it a connection that was never meant to be. But the separation is not the end of the story. It is the chapter that makes the rest of the story possible. While those two people are apart, life is quietly doing something to each of them. Something they cannot always see while it is happening. One person starts learning how to stop abandoning their own needs. They begin to understand that giving too much of themselves does not create love, it creates imbalance. The other person starts learning accountability. They begin to understand that silence has weight, that avoiding difficult emotions does not make those emotions go away. It only delays the moment when they are finally forced to face them. Both people are changing. Neither of them can see the full picture yet, and that is intentional. The pain that comes from a destined separation feels different from ordinary heartbreak. Ordinary heartbreak is sadness. This is something else entirely. It feels like losing your sense of direction. It feels like something inside you has been shaken loose, and you cannot quite find it again. You do not only miss the other person, you feel disoriented in a way that has nothing to do with them and everything to do with you. And that disorientation is the beginning of growth, because when a destined connection leaves your life, it forces you to look inward. You cannot keep looking outward anymore. There is nothing there to hold on to, so you turn inside, and what you find there changes you. You begin to notice how often you seek validation from other people. You recognize patterns you have repeated in relationship after relationship. You see where you have been choosing pain over truth. You see where you have been choosing familiarity over growth. And none of this is comfortable, but all of it is necessary. Something unusual happens to people who carry a destined connection inside them even when there is no contact. Even when there is only silence. They begin to evolve, not because they decided to, not because they made a plan, but because something was awakened inside them the moment that person entered their life. Even when they try to move on, even when they fill their time with new conversations and new routines, something underneath keeps shifting. Their standards quietly rise. What they once accepted no longer feels acceptable. What they once chased no longer holds the same pull. They begin wanting depth. They begin wanting honesty. They begin wanting something real instead of something comfortable and empty. They do not always trace this change back to that one connection, but the change began the moment that person arrived in their life. They acted as a catalyst. They set something in motion that cannot be stopped. What is remarkable about these connections is that they do not create obsession. They create reflection. You are not thinking about this person every hour of every day in a frantic and desperate way. You are thinking about your life. You are asking yourself questions you never asked before. Why do I love the way I love? Why do I fear being truly close to someone? Why do I keep choosing people who cannot fully show up for me? Why do I ignore my own needs while pouring everything into other people? These questions change you slowly and quietly. They reshape how you see yourself. They reshape what you believe love is supposed to feel like. They raise your standards, not only for how others treat you, but for how you treat yourself. And that internal shift is not something you can undo. Once it begins, it continues. Here is something that surprises people when they first understand it. The greatest purpose of a destined connection is not always the relationship itself. The greatest purpose is sometimes who you become because of it. The strength you develop, the self-respect you finally stop negotiating away, the emotional patterns you finally decide to break, the clarity you gain about what love actually requires. Real love is not only chemistry, it is not only attraction and exciting moments, it is also growth, honesty, healing, and the willingness to choose someone again and again, even when it would be easier not to. And before two people can share that kind of love, they have to learn what it means to give it to themselves first. That is the hidden lesson in every separation. That is what the distance is actually for. Destiny is not gentle. It does not protect your comfort. It protects your potential. And those two things are very different. Comfort keeps you inside familiar patterns, even when those patterns are slowly diminishing you. Potential requires that you outgrow what is safe and step into what is true. So destiny will allow things to be taken from you before it adds anything back. It will let your heart feel broken before it allows your growth to continue. It will remove people from your life before it allows you to disappear entirely trying to hold on to them. In the moment, this feels unfair. It feels harsh. It feels like something is being done to you instead of for you. But with time you begin to see the precision in it. You begin to understand that everything removed was removed for a reason. When two people who are truly meant to find their way back to each other finally do, something surprising happens. It is not dramatic. It is not overwhelming. It feels quiet. It feels steady. Your body relaxes before your mind understands why. There is less tension, less need to perform or protect yourself, less fear about what might go wrong. What arrives instead is honesty, natural, effortless honesty that does not require explanations. The connection feels calmer because both people have already walked through their own storms alone. It feels deeper because both have looked honestly at themselves and not turned away from what they found. The illusions that once surrounded the connection are gone. What remains is real, and real is far more valuable than perfect. Neither person is trying to complete the other anymore. They are simply choosing each other from a place of wholeness, and that changes absolutely everything. Not every destined connection leads to reunion. That is one of the most difficult truths to hold. Some connections enter your life only long enough to transform you. They come in, shake your inner world, awaken what needed to be awakened, and then leave once their purpose is complete. That does not make them less real. That does not make them a mistake. It makes them sacred. Sacred things are not always permanent. Their value does not come from how long they last. Their value comes from what they awaken inside you. Some connections are meant to break generational patterns of love that was confused with suffering. Some are meant to remind you that you are capable of depth and vulnerability that you had slowly closed off. Some redirect the entire path of your life by changing the choices you make and the standards you hold from that point forward. All of these are forms of destiny. All of them matter. There comes a moment in this process that most people do not expect. It arrives quietly. It arrives without announcement. You stop needing them to return. You stop searching for signs. You stop waiting for a message that you believe will finally make everything make sense. You stop hoping they come back so you can feel whole again. And this moment is not bitter. It is not resignation. It is peace, genuine peace, because you have finally understood something that took a long time to learn. Your wholeness was never inside them. It was always inside you. It was waiting for you the entire time. And that shift, that quiet and powerful shift, is where real destiny begins to move again. Not because you tried harder, not because you held on longer, but because you finally let go of the outcome. And in that release, something new becomes possible. The deepest truth about connections like these is that they are never really about possession. They were never about keeping someone. They were about becoming someone. They were about becoming someone. Someone more honest with themselves, someone more aware of their patterns, someone more courageous in the way they love, someone more clear about what they deserve and what they are no longer willing to accept. Whether that person returns or not, that transformation belongs to you. It cannot be taken. It cannot be undone. It is the part of the story that lasts longer than the connection itself. And when you look back one day with the clarity that time and growth provide, you will understand something that was impossible to see while you were living through the pain. The relationship may have been the catalyst, but you were always the point. Becoming who you were always meant to be was always the real destiny. And that is the one thing that almost always happens when two people are truly meant for each other. Not instant happiness, not perfect timing, not a story without struggle, but transformation, deep, quiet and lasting transformation that begins the moment they enter each other's lives and never truly stops. And yet people still ask the same question. They ask it in quiet moments when the world around them has gone still. They ask it at night when sleep refuses to come and thoughts arrive uninvited. They ask why something that felt so meaningful could simply stop. Why something that changed them so deeply could disappear without resolution. Why destiny would bring someone close enough to transform everything and then allow them to leave without explanation. The answer is uncomfortable, but it is also freeing. Not every chapter in a meaningful story is meant to last until the final page. Some chapters exist only to change the direction of the entire book. Some people enter your life not to stay, but to show you something you could not have seen without them. And the moment you stop demanding that meaningful things must be permanent, something inside you begins to breathe again. There is something that happens in people who have carried one of these connections long enough. Something that is hard to describe but instantly recognizable once you have felt it. They stop talking about that person with pain in their voice. Not because they have forgotten, not because the connection stopped mattering, but because they have absorbed what it taught them so completely. that the lesson has become part of who they are. The connection no longer lives outside them as longing or unanswered questions. It lives inside them as wisdom, as a quieter way of moving through the world, as a deeper understanding of what they are actually looking for and why. This is what full integration looks like. This is what it means to have truly received what a destined connection came to give. The wound becomes a foundation. The confusion becomes clarity. The loss becomes the very thing that made room for something more aligned. Growth that comes from these connections is not linear. It does not move in a straight and predictable line. Some days you feel completely free and forward-moving. Other days something small pulls you back. A song, a place, a moment where the light falls in a way that reminds you of something you cannot quite name. And people often mistake these moments for weakness. They think it means they have not healed. They think it means they are still stuck. But that is not what it means at all. It means the connection was real enough to leave a permanent impression on the way you experience the world. Real things do not disappear cleanly. They integrate. They become woven into how you see beauty, how you recognize depth, and how you understand love. Those moments of being pulled back are not setbacks. They are evidence that something genuine touched you, and genuine things deserve to be honored, not rushed through. What no one prepares you for is how much lighter you eventually feel once the lessons have been received. There is a version of you on the other side of all this growth that you cannot fully imagine while you are still inside the process. A version that does not need constant reassurance. A version that can sit comfortably in their own company without reaching for distraction. A version that enters rooms without needing to be chosen by anyone in them to feel worthy. A version that loves generously without abandoning themselves in the process. That version of you is not built by finding the right person. That version of you is built by walking honestly through the experience of losing someone who mattered, and choosing to grow from it rather than collapse. That is where the real reward lives, not in reunion, not in resolution, but in becoming someone who no longer needs love to rescue them, because they have already learned how to stand on solid ground. People spend years waiting for destiny to look the way they imagined it would. They wait for dramatic signs. They wait for perfect timing. They wait for all the obstacles to clear so that love can arrive without complications. But destiny rarely operates that way. It does not wait for perfect conditions. It works through the imperfect ones. It works through the moments that break you open just enough to let something real enter. It works through the losses that strip away what was never truly serving you. It works through the silences that force you to finally hear your own voice clearly. Destiny is not a fairy tale delivered to passive people. It is a process that rewards those who are willing to do the uncomfortable and unglamorous work of becoming more honest, more whole, and more awake than they were before. So if you are in the middle of this right now, if you are in that space between connection and clarity, between what was and what has not yet arrived, hear this clearly. You are not lost. You are not broken. You are not being punished. You are being prepared. The distance you are living through is not evidence that love forgot about you. It is evidence that something inside you is still being shaped into what it needs to become. Do not rush this. Do not collapse this process into something smaller than it is by demanding it end before it has finished. Let it teach you. Let it change you. Let it strip away everything that was never truly you to begin with. Because what remains after all of that stripping, what stands when illusions have fallen and fear has been faced and old patterns have finally been released, that is who you really are. And that is exactly the person that real love is waiting for. And perhaps the greatest realization that comes after all of this is understanding that the people who change us are never truly gone in the way we once feared. Their physical presence may leave, their messages may stop, their role in our daily lives may come to an end. But the version of ourselves that existed because we knew them remains. The courage they awakened, the emotions they helped us discover, the parts of ourselves they reflected back to us. Those things do not disappear when the connection does. They become part of our personal history. They become proof that we are capable of feeling deeply, connecting honestly, and experiencing something beyond the ordinary. The mistake many people make is believing that the value of a connection is measured only by how long it lasts. They look at endings as evidence that something failed. They assume that if someone was truly meant for them, that person would have stayed. But sometimes the most meaningful experiences are not measured by time, they are measured by transformation. A person can be in your life for years and never truly touch your soul, while someone else can arrive for a brief moment and change the way you see yourself forever. Duration does not always define depth. Sometimes impact is the only measurement that matters. Eventually there comes a moment when you stop asking, "Why did they leave?" and you begin asking, "Who did I become because they were here?" That question changes everything. It shifts your focus from what was taken away to what was given. It allows you to recognize that not every ending is a rejection. Some endings are redirections. Some goodbyes are not meant to destroy you. They are meant to move you toward a version of yourself that you were never going to discover while holding on to what was familiar. The truth is that every person you meet carries a message, even if they never intended to deliver one. Some people teach you patience. Some teach you boundaries. Some teach you what love feels like. Others teach you what you will never accept again. Every connection leaves behind something valuable, if you are willing to look beyond the pain of losing it. The lesson is often hidden beneath the emotions, waiting for the moment when you are ready to understand. And one day, without even realizing it, you will notice that you are no longer searching for that person in every new face. You are no longer comparing every connection to what once existed. You are no longer trying to recreate a moment that has already served its purpose. Instead, you begin meeting people from a place of wholeness rather than emptiness. You stop looking for someone to complete you because you have finally learned how to complete yourself. That is when love begins to feel different. It no longer feels like a desperate search for something missing. It feels like two complete people choosing to walk beside each other. It feels peaceful instead of painful. It feels like expansion instead of fear. It feels like freedom instead of attachment. Maybe that is the real purpose of these unforgettable connections. Maybe they were never only about the person who came into your life. Maybe they were about the person you were becoming because they did. And when you finally understand that, you stop chasing what has already fulfilled its purpose. You stop begging the past to return. You stop waiting for someone else to give you the closure you can create for yourself. You realize that some people are not chapters you are meant to reread forever. Some people are the sentence that changes the entire meaning of the story, and your story is still being written.